What dark secret are you hiding from everyone? One of my closest coworkers, who is an integral part of our very large corporation, killed a man in his late teens and threw the body in a lake. He only got off on a technicality. I work remotely, so I don't build a lot of personal relationships with people I work with regularly. I googled his full name. It freaked me out at first. But I've kinda gotten over it. I wonder if anyone else knows. It happened 40 plus years ago. He will retire soon, and then I might ask another coworker about it. I just don't want to stir the pot. My girlfriend started selling used pants and stuff online. Someone wanted used insoles from her shoes. I walk for about 6 hours at a time at work and often just put her insoles in my shoes. Those perverts are getting off to the smell of my sweaty feet thinking it's a girl. Last month the police called me and told me that my mother had K herself and they found her alone at her house. My whole family is devastated by that, but I am pretending to be. I knew she wanted to do it since I was 16 years old, but I knew first she wanted to make sure all of her sons are good in life. Sometimes I feel bad because I could have prevented it, but I know it is what she wanted to do all of her life. I am 31 now. When I was around 9 years old, I used my mom's credit card to sign up my shitty alcoholic stepfather for a porn website in hopes of starting a fight and her leaving him. Edit. Yes, she did leave after another year or so. My current stepdad is a real keeper. My cousin Army when I was a kid, and to this day I haven't told anyone about it. It's been probably around 25 years ago or so, which makes me feel like it's not worth addressing after so much time. I absolutely hated it when his mom asked me why I didn't invite him to my wedding. I still don't know how I should have responded to keep that a secret. Most people in my family think that my mother recently died suddenly from complications due to cancer, but she really died from the toxic effects of oxycodone, morphine, fentanyl and methamphetamine. My great-grandpa told us once he walked in on his Marine friends, our women and children, and as he said, blew all their heads off. He never let my parents leave us with anyone but my great-grandma and him. He was so afraid of what pieces of bad people were lurking out there. When I was around 5 or 6, my mom and dad were fighting just about every day. Well, I was napping on the couch when my mom came in very upset and she shook me awake. She asked me if I saw the girl my dad brought home. I've always felt terrible for this. I hadn't seen anyone but my dad that whole day. I'm pretty sure he was just playing video games like usual, but for some reason, in my sleepy kid brain I answered yes. I said she was with him in their room. I'm honestly not sure why I lied like that, but they got a divorce shortly after and I always felt like it was my fault. Until I recently found out my little sister is actually my half-sister, but that's a whole other story. When I was younger I lived with my grandmother. Not long after I turned 18 her health started to decline. That sort of decline that means she won't be around for much longer. Over the months I did my best to take care of her. Getting her to the hospital when she needed it, and other things. We had someone coming every day to help her with things I couldn't. Well, what my family doesn't know is that the night she passed, I was in the living room watching TV. My dog was in bed with my grandma, and I started to hear him whimper and bark. I knew what was happening. I knew that if I acted I could potentially save her. I didn't want to watch her suffer anymore though, to watch her live with so much pain, and be unable to do anything for herself anymore. So I made the choice to let her pass before making any calls. She lived 92 years, and the only regret I have is that she passed a month after I would have graduated if I hadn't been kicked out of school. She had been in good enough health at the time to go to my graduation. I still kick myself for how stupid I was back then. My family thinks I won $40,000 on a $20 scratch-off lottery ticket when I was 23. The truth is I was first to pass by a gang-related shooting while in Baltimore, tried to help the guy, found it spilling out of a backpack, and took it. I still called 911. But that money helped me buy my first house and a little used car. It literally changed my life. On the news, they said it was a drug trafficking ring. My uncle owned an old Camaro that collected dust in his garage. When I was around 10 my family and I were in town visiting and I wrote the word, fuck in the dust on the hood of the car. I used my thumb so that the letters were fatter than my normal index finger. A few hours later my uncle asked us who did it and I proved it wasn't me by showing how the person who did it had bigger fingers than me. Taking that shit to my grave. When I was 10, I was the victim of a serial child molester. A female teacher, so no one believed me. This is an important detail as to why I did what I would later do. Several years ago, I saw her while I was shopping. First, I was afraid. Then I realized, I was not 10 anymore. I was a 25-year-old, adult male. I became angry. I stalked her for weeks, saw her working as a teacher, still found her on social media, and catfished my way into the cougar dating Facebook group she was in. Learned she had victimized more kids since she had lost me as her pet. After I was sure of everything and had gathered my information, I plastered her neighborhood with her private FB group posts about how much she loves the feeling of power as she pins the little cubs to the desk in her office. The flyers had her face, her address, her phone number, and a bunch of other stuff. My grandpa was stationed in Okinawa, Japan during the Korean War, while in the Marines. He hooked up with a woman there, and she got pregnant. So, I have a Japanese aunt and a few cousins, in Japan, whom I've never met before. My wife and I aren't officially married. No one knows. We had a ceremony and everything, reception, the whole 9 yards. We just never did the official paperwork. We realized that since she's going back to school, it benefits her financially to go through financial aid as a single rather than married. When she finishes up, we're going to head over to town hall and finish the last step. I was married for 13 years to my best friend. We had what I thought was a great, easy marriage. One day our 5-year-old daughter told me he was having her perform oral sex on him. I was shocked, devastated and afraid. He was one of those fun guys everyone loves to be around. I immediately called the police and he was arrested. When they started investigating him, they found out that he had been arrested while in college for exposing himself to very young boys. He only got a slap on the wrist at that time because he came from a very wealthy family. One of his uncles was the governor of the state we lived in. I was so ashamed I told our friends that he had an affair and moved away. But the truth was that he was in prison for 5 years. I picked up the pieces, sent our daughter to therapy and spent the next 15 years being a mother. Paying for the private school, cool trips, etc. She was my life. Then when she went to college he reached out to her over Facebook. When I saw she was communicating with him I was shocked, devastated and afraid all over again. I called and told her that she was an adult but I thought she should be careful because he's not safe. She hung up on me and has not spoken to me since. That was 4 years ago. I send her $40,000 a year still to pay for her medical school. It's all been almost unbelievable. When I was a teenager, I worked at a novelty tourist shop near me. Being the idiot that I was, I stole a wad of cash from the store. It was $100 bills. I told nobody, but they knew it was missing. Right about the same time, a coworker who was always trying to get me fired was telling someone she got about $100 in tips from her other job. They ended up firing her because they didn't trust that it wasn't her. Hey, if you like the video so far, consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video for more. I've been an addict my entire adult life. I used to drink all day every day. Before work, at work, and after work. I'd occasionally fall asleep on my lunch break or leaving work and have to make up some illness to friends and fam who were concerned. Today marks 185 days sober. After my parents got divorced, my stepdad basically moved right in and started SA me. I knew it was wrong deep down somewhere but figured since he was an adult, he knew what he was doing and to trust him. One night my sister caught him red-handed and flipped out and told my mom. Cops came and he got arrested. I was only like 9 to 10 years old so a lot of it is a blur. At first, my mom had me sleeping in bed with her at night and was babying me and I loved it. One day, months later, we were walking home from school and we saw my dad's van sitting outside of our house. We weren't allowed in and we saw garbage bags sitting outside. My dad told us that my mom had called him earlier in the week and told him that if he didn't come and get us she'd get rid of us. She wouldn't come out and talk to us and I cried. My dad lived in another state so this meant we'd have to leave our friends and our hometown. Our friends ran after the van as we drove away. For a few years, she wouldn't talk to us BC she had allowed my stepdad to come back and that's why she stayed away. Guess she didn't want to face us after what she'd done. She'd chosen a man who'd abused her child over her own children. Eventually, we had a relationship with her again, but she was so sick. The funny thing is that she's in a really high position for one of the largest banks in America. Professionally people think she's amazing. She's a monster. I finally had the courage to cut her out when I went into recovery from my drug addiction 11 years ago and haven't spoken to her since. A few people know this story, but not many and it felt good to get it out to the world. 6 years ago when I was 24 my mom randomly told me I have an older half-sister that my dad completely abandoned. She only knew of my sister's mother's name, so I searched for her on Facebook and found my sister. She is the spitting image of our father so I knew immediately it was true. Both my sister and her mom confirmed it, and my sister and I immediately started bonding. We are incredibly close now. My father's side was overjoyed when I found her, as they knew of her but never what happened to her. We've all welcomed her with open arms, except my father. When she reached out to him, he essentially told her to fuck off, then screamed at me that she wasn't my sister, and continues to call me the bitch that ruined the family. She and I did 23andMe test and we matched as half-siblings, so now there's no denying it. You can share your own story down in the comment below, and thanks for watching the video.